13 years ago, my entire world shifted in a moment I never saw coming. It was an ordinary afternoon, ordinary in the way that life is ordinary right before it changes forever. I remember I was in the kitchen, halfway through folding laundry and halfway through cooling a pot of soup, when I heard a knock at the door. It wasn't frantic or loud, just unexpected. My daughter stood there, looking tired in a way I couldn't quite read at the time. Behind her were the kids, three little faces, each carrying their own shade of confusion. She didn't say much. She had never explained fully, not then. She just told me she needed help, that she needed a little time, and that she'd be back soon. When she placed the kids' small backpacks by the couch, something in me tightened, but I pushed it aside. As a parent, and especially as a grandparent, your instinct is always to take the children first and ask questions later. The kids came inside. I hugged them and told them everything was going to be okay, because that's what you do, even when you don't have the faintest idea what okay is going to look like. And then my daughter left. No dramatic goodbye, no big speech, no warning that this moment was about to redefine the next decade of my life. She simply walked out, closing the door with a soft click that, at the time, I never imagined I'd replay in my mind hundreds of times. Hours passed, then days. I called, I texted, I reached out to everyone who might have known where she went. The answers were always the same. No one knew. And so the days turned into weeks, the weeks into months. And before long, I realized that a little time had quietly stretched into a new reality. Suddenly, I wasn't just the grandmother helping for a weekend. I was the mother again, responsible for school forms, bedtime routines, doctor's appointments, and all the tiny, exhausting, beautiful tasks that come with raising children. In that moment 13 years ago, I didn't know I was stepping into a role I would fill for more than a decade. I didn't know how much love, sacrifice, and strength it would require. All I knew was that my daughter had left her children on my doorstep, and that opening that door meant opening an entirely new chapter of all our lives. When that door clicked shut behind my daughter, the silence in the house was deafening. A moment earlier, I'd been standing there as grandma helping out, but in those first few minutes afterward, a different reality began to creep in, and with it, a rush of emotions I could barely name. At first, it was pure shock. I kept staring at the door as if it might suddenly swing open and she'd come back in laughing, saying, "Gotcha, Mom, I'll be right back, don't worry." I walked to the window and looked out at the driveway, expecting to see her car still there. It wasn't. She was gone, and that simple fact hit me like a wave. Right behind the shock came confusion, thick and heavy. What just happened? Why did she leave so quickly? What was she really going through that she couldn't tell me? My mind started racing through every recent conversation, every small sign I might have missed. Did I say the wrong thing? Did I not listen enough? Was there something I could have done differently? It's a terrible feeling, standing there trying to solve a puzzle while three little lives are sitting in your living room waiting for answers you don't have. And then, almost quietly at first, came fear. Not the sort of fear you feel watching a scary movie, but a deep, practical, gnawing fear about what would happen next. How long would she be gone? Was she safe? Were the kids now my responsibility? Just for tonight? For a week? Or longer? I worried about money. I worried about my health. I worried about whether I had the energy to start over with homework, tantrums, and parent-teacher meetings. I worried about how I would explain any of this to the children. I remember looking at them, three pairs of eyes watching me, needing me to be strong, steady, sure, and inside I felt anything but. My heart broke for them, and at the very same time, my heart broke for my daughter too. How lost must she have been to walk away like that? In those first hours, I smiled for the children, but inside I was trembling. Shock, confusion, and fear were all sitting at the table with us. And yet, even in the middle of all that, one thing was clear. No matter how scared I was, those kids were staying with me, and somehow, some way, we were going to figure this out together. Stepping into full-time guardianship wasn't something I planned, expected, or even thought was possible at that stage in my life. I had already raised my children. I had already done the late-night feedings, the school projects, the teenage storms, and the endless cycles of laundry. I was supposed to be in the season of life where you enjoy the kids for a weekend, spoil them a little, and then send them back home. But life doesn't always consult your calendar before it hands you a new responsibility. In those early days, I felt like I was thrown back into parenthood without warning, without preparation, and without the energy I had the first time around. But there they were, 3 children who needed stability, routine, and love. And so little by little, I shifted my life to meet theirs. I swapped quiet mornings for packing lunches. I traded leisurely afternoons for school pickups, doctor's appointments, and parent-teacher meetings. I reorganized the house, turning spare rooms into bedrooms, clearing out closets and making space for toys, clothes, and the whirlwind of activity that comes with raising kids. I won't pretend it was easy. There were days I felt overwhelmed, outnumbered, and completely unqualified. I hadn't kept up with new parenting trends or rules. Homework looked different. Technology made everything more complicated. Kids had different challenges than they did 30 years ago. But every time I thought, I can't do this, I would look at those children, and suddenly the question shifted. It wasn't, can I do this? But how can I not? I learned to show up even when I was exhausted. I learned that love doesn't require perfection, only presence. I learned that stepping into guardianship wasn't about replacing their mother. It was about filling the empty space with consistency, safety, and compassion. Over time, I grew into the role. I found strength I didn't know I still had. I found joy in their milestones and pride in their progress. I found purpose in being their person, the one they could depend on when everything else in their young lives felt uncertain. Taking responsibility wasn't a heroic choice. It wasn't a grand decision. It was simply what needed to be done. They needed a home, a protector, a guide. And even though I wasn't prepared, I became all of those things. Because love has a way of calling you into roles you never imagined and giving you the courage to rise to them. Raising 3 grandchildren is a blessing, yes, but it is also a challenge that stretches you in ways you never expect. When I suddenly became their full-time guardian, the reality of what that meant settled in quickly. The financial strain came first. 3 growing children don't just need love, they need clothes, food, school supplies, medical care, transportation, and all the hidden costs that pile up quietly but relentlessly. I had been budgeting for 1 person, myself. Overnight, that became 4. Every trip to the grocery store felt like a small math problem I hoped I could solve. I learned to stretch every dollar, cut back on anything that wasn't essential, and rearrange my entire financial world so the kids wouldn't feel the weight of those worries. Then came the emotional hurdles. These weren't just children, they were children carrying confusion, abandonment, and questions they didn't always know how to ask. They missed their mother, they missed stability, and sometimes their emotions came out as tears, anger, silence, or clinging to me as if I might disappear too. I had to learn how to comfort them through storms I didn't create, but had to help them weather. I had to be patient when they acted out, understanding when they shut down, and strong when inside I felt like breaking myself. School responsibilities became another world entirely. Homework had evolved, expectations had changed. I had parent-teacher conferences again, 3 times as many. I had to track their grades, help with projects, sign permission slips, and learn to navigate the school system all over again. There were mornings when getting them all out the door felt like running a marathon before 8 a.m., and evenings became an endless loop of dinner, homework, baths, and bedtime negotiations. Through it all, I still had my own life to balance, my health, my job, my friendships, and my dreams. There were moments I felt myself disappearing beneath the weight of responsibility. My time became their time. My needs were pushed to the back of the line. I had to learn how to take tiny pockets of self-care wherever I could find them. 5 quiet minutes in the morning, a deep breath in the car, a phone call with a friend after they fell asleep. Raising 3 grandchildren meant giving up parts of my life, yes, but it also meant discovering strength I didn't know I had, and realizing that love, even exhausted love, can move mountains when children depend on it. As the months turned into years, something remarkable began to happen. Growth. Not just in the children, but in all of us. When they first arrived, the house felt tense and uncertain, like everyone was holding their breath. But slowly, day by day, we built a new kind of stability. The children learned the rhythms of the home, the routines that gave structure to their days, and the small rituals that made them feel safe. It didn't happen overnight. Healing never does. I watched them adapt with a resilience that both amazed and humbled me. The oldest learned to trust again. At first, he acted older than his years, always trying to carry the weight of responsibility as if it were his job to hold the family together. With time, he relaxed, laughed more, and let himself be a kid. The middle child, once shy and withdrawn, slowly came out of her shell, making friends, joining activities, and discovering her own talents. And the youngest, who used to cry at the slightest separation, grew into a confident, curious child who brought joy and energy into every corner of the house. As they adapted, the household transformed too. What once felt like chaos evolved into a comfortable, lived-in kind of order. We created family traditions: Friday movie nights, Sunday pancake breakfasts, silly songs on the way to school. These moments stitched us together, shaping a sense of belonging that none of us had expected, but all of us needed. And in the midst of their growth, I changed as well. I had thought my caregiving days were behind me, but I learned that love doesn't expire with age. I rediscovered patience, the kind that comes from deep breaths and second chances. I learned to navigate modern parenting, mastering online portals, new math methods, and the emotional landscape of children growing up in a world far different than the one I had raised my own kids in. I grew stronger too. Some days pushed me to my limits, testing the edges of my endurance, but they also revealed a strength I didn't realize I still possessed. I became more adaptable, resourceful, and compassionate. I learned to celebrate small victories: the first A on a test, the first time someone slept through the night without fear, the first moment I heard them say, "Grandma, we're home." Through growth and transformation, we didn't just survive. We became a family rebuilt from love, consistency, and the quiet determination to give each other the best life we could. Throughout those 13 years, even as I poured my energy into raising the grandchildren, a part of my heart was always reaching toward my daughter. She wasn't gone in the legal sense, she was gone in the emotional sense, the unreachable sense. And as a mother, that kind of distance leaves an ache that never fully settles. Despite everything, I never stopped trying to reconnect with her, to understand what had driven her to walk away, or to offer her a path back into her children's lives. In the early months, I called her constantly. I left messages, soft ones at first, then firmer ones, then simply hopeful ones. Just let me know you're okay. The kids miss you. You're still their mother, and nothing will change that. Sometimes she responded with a short text, sometimes nothing at all. I never knew where she was or what she was going through, but I kept the lines open, hoping someday she would walk back through them. As the years passed, my attempts changed shape. I tried to learn about the struggles she might have been facing. I talked to people who knew her, reached out to friends she trusted, and even sought advice from counselors on how to support someone who seemed to be running from their own life. I wasn't angry, not at first. Mostly, I was worried about her safety, her stability, her mental health, and the burdens she might be carrying. Every birthday, I sent her pictures of the children and texted updates about school wins, milestones, and funny moments, hoping those glimpses might pull her closer instead of pushing her further away. I wanted her to know I wasn't replacing her. I was holding her place open. I even invited her to holidays, extended family gatherings, and school events. Sometimes she came briefly, Sometimes she didn't show up at all, but the invitation was always there. I tried to help her too, whenever she reached out in her own way. If she needed a ride, I gave it. If she needed money, I found some to spare. If she needed space, I respected it, even though it hurt. I held on to the hope that understanding her struggles, whatever they were, would someday lead her back to being the mother her children deserved. Through all those years, despite the distance and the silence, I never stopped trying to bridge the gap. Because no matter how complicated things became, she was still my daughter. And no matter how much responsibility I carried, love never let me give up on her completely. After 13 years of raising the children, loving them, and doing everything I could to keep our fragile world together, the moment everything changed came without warning. It was an ordinary day, one of those days where life moves gently, predictably. The kids were older, more independent, and our home had settled into a steady rhythm. I wasn't expecting chaos. I wasn't expecting confrontation. Certainly not from the very person I had spent years trying to protect and support. The phone rang. I almost didn't answer it, thinking it was another routine call, school, doctor's office, maybe a relative checking in. But when I heard my daughter's voice, sharp, tense, and filled with an energy I hadn't heard in years, my heart dropped. She didn't greet me, didn't ask how I was, didn't ask how the children were. Instead, she launched into an accusation that hit me like a punch to the chest. You kidnapped my kids. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I couldn't even speak. It was as if the world froze around me. I had imagined many scenarios over the years. Anger, guilt, blame, but never that word. Kidnapping. A word with so much weight, so much darkness, so much implication. A word that didn't just question my actions, it tried to rewrite my entire reality. She said I had kept the children from her, that I had taken them without permission, that I had stolen her life and ruined hers in the process. Her voice trembled with anger, but beneath it I heard something else, confusion, pain, maybe even regret twisted into something easier to aim at me. I tried to explain. I reminded her of the day she left, of the silence that followed, of the years of unanswered calls and unopened doors, but she wouldn't hear it. She talked over me, her voice rising, her emotions spilling out in a way I couldn't catch or calm. In that moment, it hit me that the story I had lived for 13 years was not the story she was telling herself. The accusation didn't just shock me, it shattered something. It rewrote the past in an instant, turned gratitude into hostility, turned sacrifice into suspicion. It made me question everything I thought I understood about her journey and mine. That day marked a turning point, the moment when love, loyalty, and effort were suddenly overshadowed by a single devastating claim. The moment everything changed, not because of what happened 13 years ago, but because of how she chose to reinterpret it now. The accusation didn't just land, it pierced. When my daughter accused me of kidnapping her children, the emotional impact hit with a force I had never felt before. Hurt came first, raw and immediate. After all the years I had spent loving those children, sacrificing for them, reshaped my entire life to give them stability, hearing my own daughter accuse me of something so dark and untrue felt like someone had taken every moment of devotion and twisted it into a weapon. It was a wound deeper than any physical pain could ever be. Then came disbelief. I kept replaying the conversation in my head, trying to make sense of it. How could she forget the days she left them on my doorstep? How could she ignore the years of unanswered calls, the invitations she declined, the chances she abandoned? I had documented everything, not for protection, but to preserve moments for her, in case she ever returned. Yet suddenly, all those years were erased in her mind, rewritten as if I had taken something from her. My mind struggled to process her narrative that bore no resemblance to the truth I lived. Betrayal settled in next, slow but heavy. This wasn't a stranger accusing me. This was my own child. The same child whose scraped knees I had bandaged, whose tears I had wiped, whose dreams I had nurtured. I had stepped in to protect her children because I loved her. I had shielded them from instability, chaos, and uncertainty, never imagining that the hand I extended in love would one day be slapped away with an accusation meant for criminals. That betrayal cut deep, not because of the word itself, but because of who spoke it. And underneath all the emotions, quiet but terrifying, was fear. Real, practical fear. Accusations, even false ones, carry weight. I knew what kidnapping meant legally. I knew the potential consequences, the investigations, the questions, and the doubt it could cast over my entire life and the children's lives. I feared for their safety, their future, and their sense of home. Standing in the storm of hurt, disbelief, betrayal, and fear, I felt shaken to my core. The trust I had held onto for 13 years cracked, and suddenly the ground beneath me didn't feel as steady. Once such an accusation is spoken, it lingers, echoing through every part of your heart. When the accusation of kidnapping was thrown at me, I realized quickly that emotion alone would not protect me or the children. I needed to stand firmly in the truth. And the truth, thankfully, was something I had never been careless with. Over those 13 years, I had kept records, saved messages, and documented every attempt to reach my daughter. Not because I expected a fight, but because I wanted to preserve the children's history, their mother's presence, however faint, and the journey we were all on together. The first step in clarifying the truth was simply opening the box, literally and metaphorically. Inside were school enrollment papers listing me as the emergency guardian because no one else stepped forward, medical forms signed with my daughter's initial permission, text messages from the early days where she wrote, "I just need time, Mom. Take care of them for now." Photos of birthdays I invited her to, invitations she ignored, and screenshots of messages I sent over the years, telling her she was always welcome to visit, call, and be part of their lives. But I also had something just as powerful, the knowledge of the community. Teachers knew the story, neighbors had seen everything from day one, church members had watched the children grow under my care, doctors, counselors, and coaches, people who had witnessed the stability I provided and the silence from their mother, were anchors of truth who could speak to what they had seen with their own eyes. When people heard the accusation, they didn't respond with suspicion. They responded with disbelief on my behalf. More than anything, the children themselves were the clearest evidence. They knew why they came to live with me. They remembered the day their mother left and the years she stayed distant. Their stories, their stability, and their love for me were truths that could not be erased. Clarifying the truth wasn't about winning a battle or proving my daughter wrong. It was about making sure the children's lives, their safety, their history, and their sense of belonging weren't destroyed by a falsehood spoken out of pain or confusion. The truth was never complicated. I didn't take the children from their mother. I took them into my home, my heart, and into a life that needed rebuilding because it was the right thing to do. After everything, the shock, the fear, the accusations, the long years of raising children not your own, and the moments of doubt and exhaustion, one truth has remained unshakable. Love is the force that carries us through the hardest times. Choosing love, even when it is not acknowledged, misunderstood, or challenging beyond patience and endurance, is the choice that shapes lives. My story is not just about raising my grandchildren, it is about the resilience that emerges when we commit fully to caring for others, no matter how unfair or complicated life becomes. Family is not always defined by convenience or proximity. Sometimes family is defined by who shows up when it matters most. It is defined by who holds the home steady when storms blow in, who wipes tears, who celebrates victories, and who continues to hope even when hope feels distant. Over the past 13 years, I have learned that family is built on persistence, commitment, and the courage to love without expecting immediate gratitude or recognition. The children I raised are not just my grandchildren, They are living proof that stability, guidance, and unconditional care can nurture resilience, character, and joy in ways that last a lifetime. Choosing love, in my case, meant stepping into a role I never anticipated. It meant sleepless nights, financial strain, emotional hurdles, and endless sacrifices. It meant learning to be patient with the children, patient with myself, and patient with the daughter who struggled in ways I may never fully understand. And yet, through it all, that love never diminished. It never wavered. It became a lifeline not just for them, but for me. It reminded me of my own strength and my capacity to endure, adapt, and grow, even when life demanded more than I thought I could give. Resilience is born from moments when we feel most tested. It is nurtured when we act with integrity and compassion, even if the world misunderstands our intentions. It is proven not in grand gestures, but in the quiet consistency of showing up, of caring, of choosing love when choosing anything else would be easier. As I reflect on the past 13 years, I hold on to a single truth. Love is never wasted, and the bonds we build through compassion and dedication define the true meaning of family. Even when misunderstood, love transforms lives. It heals, it protects, and it endures. It is through love that we leave a legacy not of perfection, but of courage, commitment, and unwavering heart. If this story touched your heart, please show some love by hitting that like button. It really helps us share these stories with more people. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a moment of inspiration and real-life stories like this. We'd love to hear from you. Share your thoughts, your experiences, or words of encouragement in the comments below. Your story matters just as much as theirs. And if you feel moved to support this channel, there's a link to donate in the description. Every contribution helps us continue bringing meaningful stories to life and making a difference. Thank you for being here, for listening, and for choosing to spread love and hope. Your support means the world.